Hello and welcome back to part 3, and I assure you this will for sure be the last part. So we're going to be looking at the dissolve effect now, because at the moment when we increase our burn, nothing else happens. Like the model gets engulfed in flames and then that's it. So we're going to be doing the actual dissolve here with the black outline, and the way that we'll start this is essentially the inverse of what we're already doing. So we're going to be putting down a few 1- nodes. I say a few, just two, because we have two things happening here, so we want two things happening there. And before I do that, sorry, let me just enable all these previews and make sure everything is not super cramped. Okay, so we have 1-. Oh, sorry, this is a bit small. One of these days I'll come to a tutorial fully prepared, but it's not today, I guess. So we'll put these 1- here, and essentially we're just going to feed the burn amount into 1, and then the result here that we're dividing to create the smaller step will go into the other one. So it's the exact same setup here. The only difference is we're doing a 1- beforehand. So because it's the same, we know that we're just going to plonk down 2 step nodes. So step, and then I'll just copy paste. So these will go into that, and into, oh, might as well use the B channel, sorry. So that into that, and then again we'll feed the red channel into there, and the red channel into here. So now, I mean, already if we sort of increase the burn amount. Oh, okay. For some reason my textures have forgotten where they live. That's a bit strange. So let me just put those back in. I'm not really sure why that would have disappeared, but oh well, weird things happen. So now if we start to do this, we can see over here, this is our emission of where the object will burn. And then once we get about halfway, because we're doing the 1-, it's going to do the opposite, and so it will come back on itself, and it will do this. And you can see here we're at a value of 1 in the burn, so we're up to the max, but we're dividing by 1.1, which is why in here with the larger step it still exists. We do want to get rid of this completely so they both become nothing, and the way to do that is just whatever your divide amount is will also be your burn amount. So that will be that. So now we have that extra 0.1, and if I just do that, then this step goes down completely. So same again. It's just a subtract, so hit the S key, check this in here, check that in there, so we end up with the well, the opposite basically. And if I do my sliders, yada yada yada, and now if I just hook this straight into opacity just to show you what it does, I mean, you can probably guess what it will do, but let's do this. And also this will be the point where I'll find out if the blend modes were done correctly. Okay, so it looks okay in terms of functions. So we'll increase the burn amount. Okay, so something weird is going on, but we know that the opacity is definitely working. But I think actually maybe I've just mixed up my channels here. So if I feed this one into that one and that one into this one, and let's see what happens. Yeah, sorry, so this is obviously the expected result. I am jumping a little bit far ahead of myself here. We should have just hooked this one into opacity. Oh, not refraction. The subtract amount, of course, the same with the one we're doing above here. This will be for our black edge. So feeding that straight into opacity will, of course, just give you the result of the edge. So we're going to feed this one in, and so now go back, we have our model, it's whole, can't see through it, it's great. It starts to burn, and then it begins to dissolve away. Neat. So from this point we actually need to create that sort of black ashy outline, and as I was saying before, it took me a while to sort of work out the route that I was heading down is to essentially subtract the emission, and we'll use this sort of as a mask for that, but that didn't work, and let me show you why. I do this, plug that into there. So we end up with a red result, and I was messing around with this for a while. I could get red, I could get blue, I could not get black. So that does this. But I knew the answer had to be here somewhere because we have an outline. The only difference is we need to make it black. And someone that knows a lot more about shaders than me can probably come along and tell me if what I'm about to do is just sort of like murder in terms of efficiency or how things are supposed to be done. But all I did was subtract it again. So if I just come here, I'm not sure why my previews aren't working, but oh well. So I'm going to subtract this again. It sort of becomes like a triangle of subtraction. So chances are this might not be the best way to do it. So yeah, this is going to be a bit weird, especially if you're listening to this rather than just watching. I'm going to be talking just basically, I'm going to put subtract and subtract and subtract. It's going to be confusing. So if you are not watching the video at this point, then it might be best to watch the video at this point. So we're going to subtract just these results. So our initial outline result, which we're using to subtract from the emission, we're just going to subtract them again, basically. That's the long and short of it. And I'll throw that into emission. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not sure why my previews aren't working. I wonder if it's some weird glitch, like before my textures weren't loaded in, so perhaps I'm forgetting something else, or yeah, I'm not really sure. So yeah, sorry about that. Hopefully your Amplify shader works just fine. So anyway, we're going to apply this, and now it's black. So now it's pretty much the shader from when I started this little tutorial series. Wasn't supposed to be a series, just supposed to be 2 parts, but I can't form a thought to save my life, so everything just seems to take me forever. I did say we would look into vertex offsets, and I didn't lie about that, but what I am going to just do first is, if you didn't want this to be, oops, it's the heat wave. If you didn't want this to be controlled by a single slider, if you wanted the ability to essentially completely engulf an object without it dissolving first, then let me show you how to do that. Essentially the answer's already here, we just kind of need a different controller, and just to rejiggle some nodes around. So we'll start by just laying down a float, and this one will be our dissolve amount. Turn that into a property, and we're going to divide this again because we can't use the divide node that we have here because we're already dividing by this value, whereas we want to be doing the same again, like the exact same thing, but through a different value. So we'll hook this into here, and we need the same divide amount, so we'll just put that in there. And then, ooh, this is why I should have been prepared. I think it is just a case of overwriting these, and we will see when I apply and everything goes wrong. I can imagine my subscriber count already going down. Okay, so the burn still works, that's good. And it doesn't start to dissolve, also good. So now let's see if our dissolve works. Okay, it does, so partway there. I was 70% right, so maybe I'll only lose 30% of my subscribers. We have kind of hooked everything up correctly, but we are still missing the black outline. It's completely disappeared. Okay, yeah, so I made a bit of a mistake. Sorry about that. As you see, we have the divide amount running into the same. Obviously we don't want that. If it's the exact same as up here, we have the burn itself runs into a step, and then the burn goes into a divide, and then a step. So we are essentially just trying to duplicate that. I am sorry about that. So the divide amount here, where we're passing it through this new slider that we're using to control, as I said, it is going into both, so that's not what we want. So it's got to go into one of these, and probably this one. See, also this is this little crossover here. It is intentional. We are dividing the top amount by the bottom amount. So over here it made sense because the top amount was just on top, whereas the divide amount for how the nodes are organized it's on the top. So you know, if it was like that, then I don't know if this is making any sense. Essentially, it's you put in your amount and then the amount that you want to divide it by. So this crisscross here is quite important. If you were to put this into A and then that into B, yeah, it won't work. It won't work, as you can see. So yeah, I imagine that's probably another area where some people might get a bit confused. It seems confusing, but again, it's just because the way that these nodes are arranged. So this is the top, so that's the top. That's the bottom, so that's the bottom. But this is the top, whereas we want it in the bottom. So it's not my fault. It's just the way nodes are created. So anyway, we'll go ahead and apply this. And there's that, and the heat wave amount has gone up enormously. 0.02. And so now we're controlling this separately, which maybe you wanted to do, maybe you didn't. So we can fully engulf an object, and then you can control, not the heat wave, sorry, that's my bad. And then you can control the dissolve amount, like that. And also, if you aren't sure how, like if the arrangement of this is a bit of a mess, and it is, you probably want to structure things in a more organized manner. The way that you do that is the material properties on the shader window. This is for Amplify. For Shader Forge, it's in a similar kind of area. I think it's at the top. It's something to do with properties. For Shader Graph, it'll be in your whatever they called it, that floating window. It'll be either on the top right or top left. Yeah, so you'll probably want to sort this stuff out. I'm not too fussed because this is just for a tutorial, but yeah, if you were wondering, that's how you would do that. For the sake of just undoing, I don't want this to be controlled separately, so I'm just going to snap my fingers and it's going to magically be back the way it was before. Boom, just like that. Magic of editing. Okay, so I did say that we would look at the Vertex Offset stuff, and so now is the time to do that. And again, as I was saying before with the whole Shader Forge get and set stuff, it would really come in handy here. So yeah, if anyone knows how to do that, definitely let me know. So we want to be using a vertex position, because that will control the position of our verts. And we're going to be taking advantage of the local offset, or the local vertex offset node. And we're going to do this, like if I were to just feed this through, let's say, we want something that moves. So if I were to grab, say, my distortion map or something like that. So after this point, if I were to, and this, I apologize, I'm going to grab the XYZ of my secondary normal map reference, the distortion map, and I'll throw that into the B channel. This should be animating. Maybe I've somehow disabled the previews in Amplify. I'm not sure, I just opened Unity and for some reason it's not working quite as it used to, but this should be panning. So if I were to just go and throw this into here, it's gonna get messy, but bear with me. Okay, so yeah, it gets pretty wild. And obviously, because we're just doing it over the whole object, it's moving the verts of everything, whereas we really just want to concentrate on the emissive part. So when it starts to burn, those things will kind of get a bit gloopy, as it were. Yeah, so we're already doing all of this mask stuff over here to create the emission. So these things here. So this area here, or rather, I guess this first one, there's no point in using the one that's added. So this first step is the one that we would like to use as a mask, and we could just feed this straight through the multiply and then try that. And yeah, I mean, it's weird, but it's sort of the result that we were expecting. So now it's no longer affecting any of the geometry of the bits that aren't burned. So now we just kind of need to control its direction or its power. It's kind of up to you which way you want this to go. So one thing that I'm going to do is actually just feed it through a world position. I'm going to multiply these two values together, the world position and the vertex position. So this should kind of try to create something not so weird. Like here it's, I mean, this is just messy. We will create a slider to control the power of that, but for now we'll do something like this. So now, I mean, it is kind of, it's really hard to tell because of how noisy it is, but it is moving more on the Y as well. And so like before, all we're going to do is basically drop in another multiply and a value, and we'll just call this wiggle amount, make it a property, set it to something probably super low to begin with, put that in there, and then put this into our local vertex offset. And again, I mean, this is a messy kind of node setup. I hate working like this, but as I was saying, I don't yet know how to do the references of one node to the other. Okay, so we have something like this, and we can see already that 0.1, I think is what I set it to, is still pretty crazy. Maybe you want a slower amount. It is also worth noting that this we're feeding this through the normal map here, which is scrolling because of a panner, and we control that with our scroll speed. So if the actual sort of wiggle effect, if you like the power of it but the speed was kind of too much, then again we control that with scroll speed. So we can bring this right down. So now it's you know, it's a little bit more organic. It's less noisy and in your face. It's a pretty subtle result, depending on sort of how long you wanted something to burn for. Chances are, if you're sort of starting with here and just moving across like there, you know, like in game, that would probably be all you'd see. Up to you, but it looks pretty good, I think. Like, it looks like it's just so hot that it's almost kind of turning into a liquid, and then just evaporating out if it was a liquid. But yeah, ashiness and then into nothing. So yeah, that's it. Again, this node setup is just the messiest thing I've ever seen, aside from my desk. So yeah, if anyone knows how to help me with this, that would be very much appreciated. Otherwise, that is the end for this tutorial. We got there in the end. I will eventually become sort of more prepared for these tutorials, so there'll be less rambly, less mistakes. But you know, we'll see. I hope you found this enjoyable. Hope you learned something. And if you have any questions or comments, or if you're trying to make this yourself and you're running into issues, again, remember things like the panner node where we set the direction to -1. Component mask, even if you don't uncheck the Z, it will probably still work. But again, I kind of think of it as like optimizing, like why use all 3 channels when you really only need to be using 2. But yeah, I mean, if you're new, you might run into issues. So if you do have any problems, let me know. If there's anything else that you'd like to see on top of this, maybe some effect that you've thought of, which would be great, let me know and I'll see if I can make a shader from it. But yeah, on the whole, I think this is a pretty nice effect that you can control with a single slider, and if you combine this with some particle effects, so like things actually sort of like the object being on fire, and when it begins to sort of dissolve away, if you had the ash kind of actually be blown in the wind, I think it'd be really, really nice. Yeah, so again, rambling on way too long. Sorry, this is the end, I promise. Goodbye.